So at this point, it's clear to us, and it was definitely clear to Tolkien, right? Sadly, despite his efforts as an old man, as a mature man, he finds that, and as trying to be an understanding man, perhaps more understanding than most, especially for that generation, he finds that there is no middle ground to be found with this younger generation coming up. They are bent on destruction. They are bent on wanting to be orcs. They went back and forth asking, well, how do you know who this is? How do you know about Hedumor? How do I know about Hedumor? No, let me ask you this. Well, no, let me ask you first. And then finally he says, well, who the hell's going to answer the question first? And he says, well, I mean, if you respect me, I'm the older one. And if you don't respect me, I'm the one that asked you first. And finally, Ceylon basically hints, still not answering directly, but hints at the fact that, yeah, what always has happened, right? He says, can you find no answer in the past for all your age and lore? What has unsettled peoples done in the past when they feel like they need to uproot something? They go to war, right? They commit violence. They commit destruction. They murder. They commit genocide. It's always been the case. When you let anger seep into your soul to such an extent that you find no peace in anything anymore, you will break down anything and everything, right? So he basically says that and says, look, I'm not a... And then he kind of making fun of Borlas, you know, saying, I'm the one that's young and I'm the one that's less learned and I can figure it out. Why can't you figure it out? But still, if you wish to know, if you really wish to know, I could perhaps make the whispers clearer to you. He stood up. The sun had set behind the mountains. Shadows were deepening. The western wall of Borlas's house on the hillside was yellow in the afterglow, but the river below was dark. Right? So even thematically, as the sun is setting over the mountains or whatever, we're seeing the land descend into shadow, right? The land by the river below is already in darkness, while the house on the hillside that belongs to Borlas is like has that last glimmer of sunlight. You know, thematically, already visually seeing that transition into darkness upon the land, where the last bastion of light are those that are not even in the city. They're in the hillside, which is kind of the same here. Like when I go out to the countryside, even where I'm at, and see how people live their lives simply, still, despite all the crap that's going on, you realize, man, if there's any hope, it's in these people. However fickle they might be, however prejudiced they might be, they at least might stand up for something in the end, because they're withdrawn from all of this, from the centers of the drama, to put it nicely, right? He looked up at the sky and then away down the Anduin. It is a fair evening still, he said, speaking of Ceylon, but the wind has shifted eastward. Remember that in Tolkien, the east, for what it's worth, right, at least within the world of Middle-earth, the east is always where Sauron and Morgoth brew, right? Within the story of Middle-earth, because the elves were always dwelled in the west, not because of any other reason than that. The west was where the elves dwelled, that's where the woods were, that's where they were. So they maintained some level of decorum and peace in that land. And the lands east and south of that area were pretty much dominated by men and dominated by things that the elves did not have a hand in, and the Valar did not have a hand in within the story. So they were always susceptible to whatever anybody wanted to do, whether it was Morgoth, Sauron, whatever. So when he says the wind has shifted eastward, that's supposed to mean a lot to someone like Borlas, right? And us who know the lore. There will be clouds over the moon tonight. Well, what of it? Said Borlas, shivering a little as the air chilled. Unless you mean only to warn an old man to hasten indoors and keep his bones from aching. He's even trying to be nice and say, I would like to think that you give a damn about me as an old man and my health, and that you're trying to tell me that it's time to go inside, old man. Don't want you to catch a cold. But no. He rose and turned to the path towards his house, thinking that the young man meant to say no more, but Ceylon stepped up beside him and laid a hand on his arm. I warn you rather to clothe yourself warmly after nightfall, he said. That is, if you wish to learn more, for if you do, you will come with me on a journey tonight. I will meet you at your eastern gate behind your house. So already, right? Oh, there's going to be a cloud over the moon, so there's going to be shadow over the land. No one will be able to see what we do. I'm going to come to you by the eastern gate. Again, the eastern gate, behind your house, right? Surreptitious, sneaky. And if you want to find out more, I'm not going to just tell you, old man. I'm going to show you. And you're going to have to become initiate. You're going to have a hand in it. If you want to know, you need to be involved. Otherwise, I ain't telling you nothing. I will meet you at your eastern gate behind your house, or at least I shall pass that way as soon as it is full dark, and you shall come or not as you will. I shall be clad in black, and anyone who goes with me must be clad alike. Farewell now, Master Borlas. Take counsel with yourself while the light lasts. With that, Ceylon bowed and turned away, going along another path that ran near the edge of the steep shore, away northward to the house of his father. He disappeared round a bend, while his last words were still echoing in Borlas's ears. And here we have a pause. So that's that. Borlas knows, Tolkien knows, Ceylon knows, we all know. Like, at this point in time, there is an underground insurrection afoot against the old ways of Gondor, the Christian way. We got enough of a hint of that with the mention of the One, and why that gives men jurisdiction over the world and over the land to do what they must with reverence, not out of spite, not to destroy. That is under threat. Let's make it clear, right? That is under threat. And it is under threat by something that Ceylon is involved in. Sounds very much like Eyes Wide Shut, if anybody ever watched that movie. But you don't get to know about it. You're not going to be part of it. You shouldn't have even heard about it. Common folk, common man, Christian man. You can only know more if you join. I don't want to say the dark side. It sounds too much Star Wars-ish. But if you join this cult, if you join, and if you give your fealty to Khedr, then you can know more about it. Because by then, you will have sworn fealty. You will be mixed up in it. And if you turn back, we got your ass, right? And that's how it works. You don't get to know about what these people are doing unless you join the cult, unless you swear oaths to them that if you fail, you can bet your ass they're going to come back, they're going to come get you. Is that maybe not what we're seeing right now with all these people that are getting dragged by the so-called FBI, the law, the government? It's either because they are Christian and are speaking out against it, or because they were involved in it somehow, and maybe they were threatening to speak out. You know, without mentioning any names there. This is how it works. This is how it's always worked. This was written years before the events of today. You know, at least 60 years. Nothing has changed. It's just they've now gathered enough numbers. Ceylon and his crew have gathered enough numbers, and they've gathered enough boldness, and they have enough people in positions of power where they can come out in the open and say some things that they weren't doing before, right? So Tolkien realized from this that there wasn't going to be any kind of discussion. There wasn't going to be any middle ground. There was no way to assuage the upset party in this, to find peace, to come to terms, to find a middle ground, to move forward. No. This is gonna lead to war. Okay. So Borlas, who is distinctly of the faith, let's say, right? Of the faith of the great king that was Aragorn and what he fought against. I mean, he's not going to turn his back on that, you know? It's easy to get young people because they haven't suffered, they haven't been through it, they don't know. They're easy to confuse with logic and to coerce with money and with pleasures and with promises. They don't know what it is to be lied to, or they don't understand what it means to stand up for something. It's easy to coerce the young. It's not so easy to do so with the old. And you only have two options with people like that. You wait for them to die or you kill them, right? For some while after Ceylon had gone, Borlas stood still, covering his eyes and resting his brow against the cool bark of a tree beside the path. As he stood, he searched back in his mind to discover how this strange and alarming conversation had begun. What he would do after nightfall, he did not yet consider. Because this is more than a proposition, right? This is now a threat. It's when you get this, even when you get this deep, which Borlas hasn't gotten that deep into it yet, right? He just had a conversation about it. But a proposition was made, even when you get that deep in, right? Your choice is going to determine what's going to happen to you. It's not just like you can say, oh, no, I don't want to, it's all good, man. You go your way, I go mine. No. You weren't even supposed to know about Hedamore. Now you know about Hedamore. You got to join us, or I'm going to have to kill you, old man. Right? And he's very keen on that. He had not been in good spirits since the spring, though well enough in body for his age, which burdened him less than his loneliness. Since his son Berilach had gone away again in April, he was in the ships and now lived mostly near Pelargir, where his duty was. Ceylon had been most attentive whenever he was at home. He went much about the lands of late. Borlas was not sure of his business, though he understood that, among other interests, he dealt in timber. He brought news from all over the kingdom to his old friend, or to his friend's old father. For Berilach had been his constant companion at one time, though they seem seldom to meet nowadays, right? So there's also a couple of notes here on that. I don't know if they're worth noting. There's a little bit of a change on the writing, and we'll discuss it. But basically he's saying that, his son is away, his son is in the army, basically, in the navy, whatever you want to call it, for Gondor. So he's away, so he's had nobody with him. Obviously he's alone. No mention of the wife. We assume he's passed away. Kind of like Tolkien at this point in his life, right? His wife had passed away. His sons were busy. And this man, this youth, is the closest he's got to someone to give him news of things. He mentioned that he deals in timber, which goes to show why he was having that discussion about timber in the first place, how he used that, meaning that the rationale in Ceylon for selling timber is, I can do what I want. So yeah.